Hey man, there is a shift every man eventually goes through. A moment when the balance of power in a relationship quietly turns. It doesn't happen when you buy her flowers, when you chase her approval, or when you bend over backward to prove your worth. It happens when you finally stop needing her. And that moment, when she feels it in her bones that her emotional grip on you has loosened, is the moment her entire world changes. Women are masters at sensing neediness. They can smell it in your tone, see it in your actions, and feel it in your presence. But when that need evaporates, when she realizes your happiness, your confidence, your sense of self are no longer tied to her validation, she feels something she didn't expect: fear. Not the kind of fear that makes her run, but the kind that makes her reassess everything, because suddenly, the power she thought she held has slipped from her fingers. When a man no longer needs her, he radiates something women can't resist: emotional independence. It's the difference between orbiting around her moods and standing firm in your own reality. She can sense when your entire emotional state depends on whether she smiles at you, texts you back, or shows you attention. That kind of dependency feels suffocating to her, even if she doesn't say it outright. But when she realizes you don't need her responses to validate you, when she sees that your life is moving forward, regardless of whether she's by your side, she's confronted with the possibility that she could lose you. And paradoxically, it's in that loss of control that her attraction can spike. Because women don't chase men who need them, they chase men who don't. And when she knows you no longer require her presence to feel whole, she begins to see you with fresh eyes. This moment is so powerful because it exposes a hidden truth about relationships. The person who is least dependent on the other always holds the leverage. For so long, she may have gotten used to being the center of your world, knowing that your attention, energy, and love were guaranteed no matter how she behaved. But when that guarantee disappears, when she realizes you are not anchored to her anymore, it forces her to evaluate her role in your life. And this isn't about manipulation. It's not about pretending to not need her while secretly still obsessing. It's about genuinely stepping into your own strength, building a life, a purpose, and a vision so complete that no woman can make or break it. That is the kind of independence that terrifies her, because suddenly she realizes she has to bring value to stay in your orbit. You can see this play out in subtle ways. The same woman who once pulled away begins leaning in. The one who ignored your calls now checks your social media. The one who seemed indifferent now suddenly wants to know what's going on in your world. Why? Because neediness is repulsive, but independence is magnetic. And when she knows you don't need her anymore, she starts wondering if she misjudged you. Maybe she thought you were like every other man who would crumble without her. Maybe she believed she could pull away and you chase. But now, faced with the reality that you're not waiting by the phone, that you're not begging for attention, she feels the sting of uncertainty. That uncertainty is powerful because it flips the script. She becomes the one questioning whether she still holds a place in your heart, whether she still matters in your life. But here's the deeper truth. The moment she knows you don't need her anymore isn't just about her, it's about you. Because it signals that you've finally broken free from the illusion that love means dependency. Real love, real connection, cannot exist when one person is clinging for survival. It only thrives when both are whole, when both bring their best selves to the table without fear of losing everything if it ends. So when you step into that space of independence, you don't just change how she sees you, you change how you see yourself. You realize that you were never supposed to live for her approval, her validation, or her affection. You were supposed to live for your mission, your vision, your path. And when she recognizes that shift, when she feels that she no longer defines your existence, she knows she is either going to rise to meet your strength or lose you forever. What makes this moment so striking is that it shifts the emotional balance she relied on. Women often thrive on being the center of a man's attention because it feeds their sense of worth. Even when they pull away or play games, there's a comfort in knowing he'll always be there waiting. But when that certainty vanishes, when she sees that you no longer orbit her every move, she feels a void she didn't anticipate, and that void unsettles her. She starts questioning her own choices. She wonders why you aren't reacting, why you aren't chasing, why you aren't doing what she expected. And the more she notices your indifference, the more it gnaws at her. Because for the first time, she isn't the one dictating the tempo of the relationship. You are. By not needing her, you've changed the unspoken contract, and now she's the one who has to prove herself if she wants to stay in your world. This is why indifference is more powerful than anger. Anger tells her you're still invested, still triggered, still emotionally tied to her behavior. But indifference? That cuts deeper than any argument. When she realizes that her withdrawal no longer affects you, that her moods don't dictate your peace, she feels something most women aren't prepared for: insignificance. And it's not because you're trying to make her feel small. It's because you've reclaimed your emotional energy and directed it back into yourself. You no longer give her the power to destabilize you. And once a man stops reacting, once he truly stops needing her attention to feel grounded, he forces her to confront a truth she's been avoiding. She was never as important as she thought. That revelation shakes her more than any words could. Because in her world, a man who doesn't need her is a man she can't control. And that's both terrifying and irresistibly magnetic. Here's where the psychology runs even deeper. Women are instinctively drawn to men they feel they could lose, not men who are guaranteed. When she knows you don't need her anymore, she suddenly sees you as scarce, and scarcity drives value. The very same man she took for granted yesterday becomes the man she starts questioning today. She begins to replay your moments together, not as proof of her control, but as evidence of what she might be losing. This reversal flips the power dynamic. For once, she's the one worrying, the one second-guessing, the one lying awake at night wondering if you're slipping away. And the irony is that you didn't have to play games or manipulate her to get there. You simply stopped needing her, and in that shift, you unlocked the deepest part of attraction, the fear of loss. But this isn't about making her chase or about winning some battle of egos. The real win is what happens inside you. The day you stop needing her is the day you stop living life as half a man, because dependence shrinks you. It makes you smaller, more desperate, more reactive. It ties your self-worth to her moods, her affection, her attention. And when that affection fades, you collapse. But when you step into independence, you cut those strings. You rediscover that your value doesn't come from her validation, but from the strength you build on your own. Suddenly, your energy shifts. You walk differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with a quiet confidence that she can't ignore. Because confidence built on independence isn't loud or performative, it's steady, unshakable. And that's the kind of confidence that makes her realize you no longer need her, but she still desperately wants you. The fascinating part is that women often don't realize how much they rely on your neediness until it's gone. They get used to the comfort of being wanted, the safety of knowing you'll always reach out first, always fight harder, always be there no matter what. And when that disappears, it forces them into reflection. She might not say it outright, but she'll feel the shift. She'll notice the way you no longer check in constantly, the way you no longer explain yourself, the way you no longer chase after her moods. And while part of her might resent the loss of control, another part of her will respect you more than ever. Because deep down, women don't admire the men who need them, they admire the men who choose them. And when she knows you no longer need her, she realizes that if you stay, it's not because you have to, it's because you want to. And that, ironically, makes your presence worth more than ever before. When you stop needing her, something remarkable happens. The energy shifts in every interaction. You no longer hang on to her every word. You no longer seek hidden meaning in her texts. You no longer feel compelled to explain yourself when she acts distant. Instead, you operate from a calm center, a place where her behavior is simply observed, not obsessed over. And she feels this shift immediately. Women are hyper-attuned to emotional energy, and when they sense that yours is no longer dependent on them, they instinctively adjust their behavior. At first, this might look like frustration. She might test you harder, create small conflicts, or try to pull you back into the role of the needy man she once controlled. But when you stay calm through those storms, when you remain unmoved by her attempts to regain leverage, she feels a deeper pull toward you. Because you've proven something most men never do, that you're strong enough to walk away from her without collapsing. It's in this moment that you separate yourself from nearly every man she's ever known. Most men don't understand that women test not to destroy, but to reveal. When she creates distance, when she withholds affection, when she challenges your frame, what she's really asking is, can you handle me at my worst without losing yourself? And the majority of men fail. They become emotional, reactive, desperate. They try harder, give more, explain endlessly. But you, the man who no longer needs her, respond differently. You don't chase her validation because your worth isn't tied to it. You don't argue with her moods because you know her emotions are her responsibility, not yours. You don't crumble when she withholds affection because your sense of peace doesn't depend on her approval. That's what terrifies her, and that's also what attracts her, because a man who doesn't need her is a man she knows she can't break. This shift also dismantles one of her most powerful illusions, that she is irreplaceable. For so long, she may have believed that you saw her as the only source of love, intimacy, or connection. And as long as you behaved as though you couldn't live without her, that illusion remained intact. But when she sees you thriving without her, when she notices that your world hasn't collapsed, that your energy hasn't dimmed, that you are still growing, still building, still moving forward, she feels the sting of reality. She realizes that you are not bound to her presence, and that realization changes everything, because suddenly, the man she thought she could discard becomes the man she can't forget. You've removed yourself from the category of ordinary men and entered the realm of rare men, men who are complete on their own, men who don't beg for attention, men who only choose what aligns with their vision. Here's the paradox that makes this moment so powerful. By no longer needing her, you give her the chance to actually love you. True love can't exist in dependency. When one person needs the other to feel whole, it creates imbalance. One gives, the other takes, one pursues, the other pulls away. But when you're no longer desperate for her, when you've built yourself into a man who is full with or without her, you create the conditions for genuine connection. Now, if she stays, it's not because she feels obligated or because you demanded it, it's because she truly wants to. And that makes her affection more real than it's ever been, because now she knows you don't need her, you don't depend on her, you won't crumble if she leaves, which means that if you keep her in your life, it's a choice, not a necessity. And women respect choices far more than they respect desperation. The beauty of this moment lies in how liberating it is for you. For the first time, you're free. Free from the trap of emotional dependency. Free from the fear of abandonment. Free from the exhausting cycle of proving yourself. You no longer wake up wondering what she thinks of you, or whether she's drifting away. You wake up focused on your mission, your growth, your vision. And ironically, that's what makes her gravitate back. Because women are drawn to men who are already fulfilled, men who don't place them at the center of their existence, men who carry themselves as though they were complete long before she entered their lives. The moment she knows you don't need her anymore is the moment she sees you at your most powerful. And that power, quiet, steady, unshakable, is what pulls her back in ways chasing never could. One of the most profound realizations you'll ever have is that women don't respect men who put them at the center of their lives. They may enjoy the attention for a while, they may soak up the energy you give, but eventually it breeds contempt. Why? Because she sees it for what it is, dependence. And dependence kills attraction. She wants to feel chosen, not needed. Neediness puts pressure on her, like the weight of your entire happiness rests on her shoulders, and that weight suffocates her. But when she realizes you've removed her from the pedestal, when she sees that you're living a full, vibrant life without leaning on her as your emotional crutch, she begins to respect you in a way she couldn't before. Because now she sees you as a man in control, a man she can admire, a man who doesn't collapse in her absence. That shift forces her to question whether she underestimated you all along. It's also worth noting that this moment doesn't just affect how she sees you, it affects how she sees herself. When she realizes you don't need her anymore, it disrupts the narrative she built in her head. Maybe she thought she could always have you waiting in the background. Maybe she assumed you'd never move on, that you'd always need her validation to keep going. But now, confronted with the reality of your independence, she feels something she wasn't prepared for: doubt. Doubt about her own value. Doubt about her choices. Doubt about whether she walked away from a man she shouldn't have. And that doubt eats away at her, because women are not wired to easily accept the loss of a man who is truly strong. She may not admit it to you. She may never say it out loud, but internally she feels the sting of regret, or regret that only grows the longer you thrive without her. This is why the moment you stop needing her is so powerful. It forces her to see you in a new light, and it forces you to see yourself as more than just a man in love. Most men define themselves by their relationships, but the strongest men define themselves by their purpose. And when she sees that shift in you, when she notices that you've stopped pouring all your energy into her and redirected it into building something bigger than both of you, she feels the weight of her own irrelevance. That's not to say she no longer matters at all, but she no longer defines you. And that's what rattles her. Because women are used to being the sun in a man's universe. When you become your own sun, when your light shines regardless of whether she's in your orbit, she feels the difference. And deep down, she respects it, even if it terrifies her. Men often misunderstand this independence as coldness or detachment. They fear that by not needing her, they'll push her away. But the opposite is true. A man who doesn't need a woman isn't cold, he's free. And freedom is attractive. Freedom is magnetic. Freedom is what allows you to love without desperation, to give without expectation, to connect without fear. Women sense that difference instantly. When she knows you're free, when she knows your happiness isn't chained to her moods, she's drawn to you in ways she can't explain. Because what she feels isn't just attraction, it's admiration. She admires the man who could love her but doesn't depend on her. She admires the man who chooses her but doesn't cling to her. And that admiration turns into respect, and respect is the foundation of lasting desire. So when she realizes you don't need her anymore, she will act differently. At first, she may resist. She may push harder, test harder, even try to provoke a reaction. But as she fails to shake you, as she sees your steadiness, she'll begin to shift. She'll lean in more, she'll seek your attention, she'll crave your presence in ways she never did when you were always available. And if she doesn't, that's your answer too. Because the moment you no longer need her, you're free to walk away without fear. And that's the ultimate power. The ability to love fully, while knowing you could leave at any time. Women sense when a man has that power, and when she knows you don't need her anymore, she knows she's dealing with a man who cannot be broken, cannot be controlled, and cannot be forgotten. The final layer of this transformation is how it impacts your very presence. When a man truly stops needing a woman, it changes the way he carries himself. There's no desperation in his eyes, no anxious edge in his voice, no hidden tension in his body language. He no longer waits for her responses or tailors his every move to her approval. Instead, he speaks with calm certainty, moves with deliberate purpose, and radiates an energy that says, "I am whole, with or without you." And women can feel this immediately. They may not be able to articulate it, but they sense it. They notice that you don't rush to fill silence, that you don't break your frame when challenged, that you don't bend yourself into pieces just to keep them happy. And that calm, steady presence unnerves them because it exposes their own instability. But at the same time, it draws them in because women crave stability, and nothing feels more stable than a man who doesn't need them but still chooses to stand strong in his own reality. This is why the moment she knows you don't need her anymore is so haunting for her. It's not just about losing your attention, it's about losing her power. For so long, she may have felt secure, knowing she could push your buttons, control your reactions, or sway your emotions with her moods. But when she realizes those buttons no longer work, that power vanishes. And women don't easily recover from the loss of emotional control. They thrive on knowing they can affect you, that they matter enough to disrupt your peace. But when you no longer hand them that power, when you remain steady regardless of what they do, they are forced to face the uncomfortable truth. You are the one who matters more, because you have what they secretly crave: inner strength, unshakable composure, and the ability to walk away without fear. That is the kind of man who lives rent-free in her mind long after the relationship ends. And here's the irony: many women will resent this shift at first. They'll accuse you of being cold, distant, or detached. They'll test harder, trying to provoke you into proving you still need them. But once those tests fail, once they see that your independence isn't an act but a genuine state of being, the resentment begins to turn into admiration. Because deep down, women don't want men they can easily control. They want men they can respect. And respect only comes when you're unshakable, when you're grounded in yourself, when your life doesn't hinge on their approval, that's when attraction deepens beyond the surface level, because now she sees you not as a man who needs her, but as a man who could have her and chooses to. And that choice, that restraint, that self-sufficiency is what makes her realize she's dealing with a man unlike any she's known before. For you, this shift also brings peace, because once you no longer need her, you stop fearing her absence. You stop waking up wondering if she'll stay. You stop worrying about whether she'll love you tomorrow. And that freedom is priceless. It allows you to focus fully on your mission, to build your world without distraction, to live with a clarity that most men never experience. And ironically, that's when women gravitate back the most, because they are drawn to men who are already complete, men who don't need saving, men who don't beg for love. By standing firm in your independence, you give her the rare opportunity to experience love without pressure, connection without control, intimacy without dependency. And whether she admits it or not, that's the kind of love every woman craves, even if it terrifies her. So understand this, the moment she knows you don't need her anymore is the moment you reclaim your power. It's the moment you step out of her world and fully into your own. And once you do, everything changes. She may respect you more, she may chase you harder, or she may disappear entirely, but no matter which way it goes, you win. Because the outcome no longer defines you, you define yourself. That's the ultimate freedom, that's the ultimate strength, and that's the ultimate truth. A man who doesn't need her is the man she will never forget, because in a world where so many men give themselves away for scraps of validation, you stood tall, unbroken, untouchable, and once she's felt the presence of a man like that, no one else will ever measure up. What most men don't realize is that women don't lose sleep over the man who needed them. They lose sleep over the man who didn't, the one who showed her genuine love but never begged for it, the one who was present but never clingy, the one who, when she tried to walk away, didn't collapse, didn't chase, didn't make her the center of his storm. That man lingers in her mind because he was different, he was whole before her and whole after her. And deep down, she knows, men like that are rare. They don't come around often, and when they do, women remember them for life. Even years later, when she's moved on to someone else, the thought of you will creep back into her mind, not because she still owns your heart, but because she never owned your soul. And the moment she realizes that, she understands she never had the control she thought she did. This is why walking in strength, in independence, in self-sufficiency is not just attractive, it's unforgettable. A man who doesn't need a woman is like an anchor in a world full of storms. He doesn't sway with every wave, doesn't break when the winds change. And while women might try to test his stability, once they feel it, they can't unfeel it. They may deny it, fight it, or even resent it, but they will always respect it. And respect is what keeps your presence etched into their memory, because attraction fades without respect. But when she knows you are unshakable, when she knows you stand on your own 2 feet without leaning on her for survival, you become more than just a lover in her eyes. You become a man she measures every other man against. And no matter how far she runs, no matter who she chooses next, she'll always compare. And here's the twist that makes this truth so powerful. When she finally recognizes that she can't control you, she also realizes that the only way to keep you is by bringing value. Gone are the days where she could coast on looks, on charm, on emotional manipulation. With you, it doesn't work, because you don't need her. You'll only choose her if she adds to your life, if she aligns with your path, if she elevates your world instead of dragging it down. And that realization shakes her deeply, because now, for the first time, she has to earn her place. Not through games, not through withholding, not through power struggles, but through genuine connection, loyalty, and respect. And that terrifies her as much as it excites her, because women aren't used to men with standards, but when they find one, they know. This is the man who can change everything. This is why the phrase "don't need her, choose her" is so important. Need is weakness, choice is power. When you need her, she becomes your oxygen, and without her, you suffocate. But when you choose her, you're saying, "I'm already breathing, I'm already alive, I'm already thriving." But with you, life becomes richer. That's the foundation of real strength in relationships. Because now, the power is balanced. She's not your savior, she's your partner. and she can feel the difference. A man who needs her puts her on a pedestal and loses himself in the process. A man who chooses her brings her into his world but never lets her define it. And that's why she'll never forget the moment she realizes you don't need her anymore. Because it's the moment she realizes she's standing in front of a man who could live without her but doesn't want to. And that's far more powerful than any need could ever be. So understand this clearly. The moment she knows you don't need her anymore is not just a turning point in the relationship, it's a turning point in your life. Because it marks the day you stepped into your true masculine frame, the day you stopped outsourcing your happiness, the day you finally understood that love cannot be forced, begged for, or clung to. It can only be chosen freely from a place of strength. And whether she stays or goes, whether she rises to meet you or fades into the background, you remain whole, you remain powerful, you remain untouchable. That is the gift of not needing her. That is the legacy of every man who outgrows desperation and embraces independence. And once you cross that threshold, you'll never go back. Because now you've seen the truth. A man who doesn't need her is a man she will never truly forget. When she finally senses that you don't need her anymore, one of the most striking changes you'll notice is the way her energy toward you shifts. At first, she may have been dismissive, cold, or even arrogant in her assumption that you'd always be around no matter how she treated you. But the second she feels that grip slipping, something awakens inside her. She'll start leaning back in ways you may not expect. Maybe she'll suddenly be more responsive. Maybe she'll start initiating conversations. Maybe she'll even find excuses to accidentally bump into you. This isn't coincidence, it's instinct. Women are wired to seek stability. And when she realizes you've stepped into a space where her approval no longer dictates your value, she feels that stability radiating off you like a force field. And while she may try to mask it at first, her behavior betrays her emotions. She can't help but be drawn back toward what she thought she could dismiss, a man who stands tall without her. But let's make one thing absolutely clear. Her pullback toward you isn't just about missing you, it's about respecting you. Respect is the foundation of attraction, and without it, nothing else lasts. For as long as she believed you needed her to survive, she held the power and respect diminished. But the moment she realizes you're living without her, thriving without her, and building without her, that respect returns tenfold. Suddenly, she sees you differently. She sees you as rare. She sees you as a man who is wanted by choice, not by necessity. And respect has a funny way of reigniting everything else. Once she respects you again, desire follows. The problem for her is that by the time she reaches this realization, you may already be too far gone. Because when a man truly learns not to need a woman, he never fully returns to that old version of himself. He's tasted freedom, and freedom has no equal. This is also the moment when the true test of your growth arrives, because it's easy to claim you don't need her. It's easy to tell yourself you've moved on, that you're focused on your mission, that you've outgrown dependency. But the real proof comes when she senses that change and tries to re-enter your life. Will you collapse at the first sign of her renewed attention, falling back into old patterns of overinvestment and neediness? Or will you stand firm in your new reality, maintaining your independence even when she comes closer? That's where most men fail. They confuse temporary detachment with permanent strength. But true independence isn't an act. It's not about ignoring her to spark attraction. It's about genuinely building yourself into a man who values his path above her presence. If you can hold that frame even when she returns, you prove you've mastered the very thing that once controlled you. And here's where it gets interesting. Once she realizes you don't need her anymore, she begins to feel the exact fear you used to feel. For so long, you may have worried about losing her, about her walking away, about being replaced. That fear made you chase, overthink, and give more than you should have. But now, the roles reverse. Suddenly, she's the one wondering if you've moved on, if you've found someone else, if she still matters in your world. That fear gnaws at her because it's unfamiliar. Women are used to being chased, to being the prize, to knowing a man's attention is secure. But when she no longer has that assurance, when she feels the weight of potentially losing you for good, her behavior shifts dramatically. She goes from confident to cautious, from dismissive to attentive, from secure to insecure. And that's not manipulation on your part. That's the natural outcome of balance being restored. What makes this moment so powerful isn't just that she feels your absence, it's that she feels your strength. There's a difference. Absence can be temporary, but strength lingers. When you stop needing her, you don't just disappear, you evolve. And that evolution leaves an imprint. She sees the new way you carry yourself, the new calm in your demeanor, the new direction in your life. She realizes you're no longer the man who once waited anxiously for her attention. You're a man who built himself into someone she may no longer even deserve. And that realization cuts deeper than any silence ever could. Because while she may have thought leaving you would hurt you, she never anticipated that it would transform you. And now, every time she thinks of you, she's reminded not of the man she left, but of the man she lost. When she knows you don't need her anymore, the silence between you takes on a completely different meaning. Before, that silence used to frighten you. You would overthink every gap in communication, assume the worst, and rush to close the distance. But now, that same silence becomes your ally. You don't chase to fill it. You don't beg for answers. You don't let it consume your peace. Instead, you lean into it. And here's the twist. Women feel silence far louder than men do. To her, your lack of need doesn't sound like apathy. It sounds like strength. It's proof that your life doesn't revolve around her validation. Proof that her attention is no longer your oxygen. And while she may act indifferent on the surface, that silence begins to gnaw at her. Because deep down, she knows that a man who can thrive in silence is a man who can thrive without her. This shift is so profound because it strips away her safety net. Women are often comfortable taking men for granted, precisely because they assume he'll always be there. Even if she's distant, even if she's disrespectful, even if she withholds affection, she counts on his neediness to keep him tethered. But when she realizes that tether has been cut, when she feels that you no longer orbit around her moods, she experiences something she didn't expect: vulnerability. For the first time, she's no longer certain of her hold on you, and that uncertainty unsettles her more than anything else. Because a woman's greatest fear isn't rejection, it's irrelevance. The moment she knows you don't need her anymore, she begins to feel irrelevant in your world, and that's a pain she can't easily shake. Men underestimate how much this realization flips the dynamic. For so long, you may have been the one trying to prove yourself, trying to earn her attention, trying to reassure her of your love. But now she's the one asking silent questions. Does he still think of me? Does he still want me? Could he be happier without me? That mental shift is powerful because it's no longer you chasing reassurance, it's her. And while she may never ask you outright, those questions swirl in her mind, growing louder the longer you remain steady in your independence. This is why the men who learn to stop needing women become unforgettable. They don't beg for closure. They don't chase validation. They simply live. And in that living, they leave behind an imprint that time, distance, or even new relationships cannot erase. But here's where most men fail after reaching this stage. They confuse independence with coldness. They think not needing her means shutting themselves off from love, affection, or vulnerability altogether. And that's a mistake. The true power lies not in avoiding connection, but in redefining it. When you no longer need her, you create the space to love freely, without fear of loss. You can give affection without begging for it in return. You can enjoy intimacy without clinging to it as if it defines your worth. That's the difference between a boy and a man. A boy loves from a place of fear. Fear of losing, fear of being abandoned, fear of not being enough. A man loves from a place of abundance. He knows he will be whole whether she stays or goes. And that kind of love, rare and steady, is what makes women feel both safe and challenged in ways they can't walk away from. The ultimate truth is this: the moment she knows you don't need her anymore is the moment you finally become free. Free from the prison of her moods, free from the anxiety of her validation, free from the desperation that kept you chasing shadows of love. And in that freedom, you discover a deeper kind of peace, the kind that no one can take from you. Women sense that peace, and it's magnetic. It draws them in, not because you're playing games, but because peace is so rare in today's world. Most men are restless, desperate, and easily shaken. But you've become the man who stands tall in his own world, who doesn't bend for temporary affection, who doesn't trade his power for approval. And that man the one who needs no one yet commands respect wherever he goes, is the man women never forget, even long after they've gone. The most fascinating part of this transformation is how it rewrites the way she perceives you in her memory. When she thought you needed her, she could frame the story however she wanted. You were the one who chased. You were the one who tried harder. You were the one who couldn't let go. But the moment she feels that you no longer need her, the story shifts. Suddenly, her mind begins rewriting the past. She starts to recall your strength more than your weakness, your independence more than your attachment. She begins to wonder if she misread the entire relationship. And this revisionist memory works in your favor because it reshapes how she sees you even long after you're gone. That's why so many women circle back months or even years later, not because they suddenly discovered something new, but because their perspective of who you were has been completely rewritten by the man you became after she lost you. And this is why discipline matters so much. A man who truly doesn't need her anymore, doesn't flaunt it, doesn't brag about it, doesn't try to shove his independence in her face. He simply lives it. He lets his actions do the speaking, his growth, his peace, his steady forward motion. That kind of quiet strength is far louder than any words you could ever say. Because when a woman senses that you're not acting indifferent just to provoke her, but that you've genuinely built yourself into a man who no longer ties his happiness to her, she can't dismiss it. She might try at first. She might tell herself it doesn't matter, but over time she'll feel it in the way you carry yourself, the way you no longer react, the way you've built a life so rich and full that she no longer feels like the center of it, and that realization never leaves her. What you must understand is that this moment isn't just about relationships, it's about your entire identity as a man. For too long, many men define themselves through women. They measure their worth by whether they're desired, validated, or chosen. But once you break that cycle, once you discover that your value comes from your mission, your vision, and your self-respect, you unlock a different kind of strength. You stop chasing not just her, but everyone's approval. You stop bending your identity to fit into someone else's world. You stop selling yourself short for temporary validation, and this strength radiates into every area of your life. Your work, your friendships, your goals. That's why women feel it so strongly when you stop needing them, because the shift isn't just about them. It's about you becoming a man who is finally living in alignment with himself. The irony is that once you reach this point, women will often chase you harder than ever. They'll sense the difference in you immediately. The calmness in your eyes, the steadiness in your presence, the fact that you're no longer moved by games or moods. And for women, that kind of stability is rare. They may test you harder at first, pushing to see if you'll crack, trying to confirm whether this independence is real or just an act. But the longer you hold firm, the more their behavior changes. Instead of pulling away, they start leaning in. Instead of withholding, they start giving more. Instead of acting like they have endless options, they start worrying about whether they can keep your attention. And all of this happens without you chasing a thing, because when she knows you don't need her anymore, she realizes she must bring more to the table to stay in your world. But here's the ultimate takeaway. The moment she knows you don't need her anymore is not really about her, it's about you reclaiming your soul. Because the truth is, no woman, no relationship, no romance should ever define who you are. The minute you hand over your identity to someone else, you give away your strength. But when you stand on your own, when you build yourself into a man who is complete before love and complete after love, you rise above the cycle of desperation and dependency that keeps most men trapped. And in doing so, you create a presence that women respect, admire, and never forget. That's the real secret. Not to make her miss you, not to manipulate her emotions, but to become the kind of man who is unforgettable precisely because he doesn't need anyone to complete him. That is the moment she feels your power. That is the moment she knows she can lose you. And that is the moment you win. When you finally detach and live from a place of inner strength, something profound happens. You stop seeing women as the gatekeepers to your happiness. You stop measuring your life by whether she stays or goes. You stop falling into the trap of believing that love is supposed to complete you. And because you're no longer clinging, your relationships begin to look different. You no longer tolerate disrespect because you're not afraid to walk away. You no longer overinvest because you're not chasing approval. You no longer confuse temporary attraction for lasting loyalty because your eyes are finally clear. And in this clarity, women notice a different kind of man standing before them, one who cannot be manipulated, one who cannot be shaken, one who has built himself into someone who will be fine with or without them. This is why silence and detachment feel so heavy to her. Because when you no longer need her, she feels something that words cannot describe: the weight of her own replaceability. For the first time, she realizes that she isn't the center of your world, that she isn't the one controlling the narrative, that she isn't the one with all the power. And this realization unsettles her deeply, because women are used to men folding, chasing, pleading, and explaining themselves into exhaustion. But when you stand firm, when you remain calm, when you carry yourself with dignity, she realizes she is up against a man who cannot be controlled. And ironically, it is in this very moment, when she feels she has the least hold over you, that her desire to pull you back grows the strongest. Yet, here's the deeper truth: whether she comes back or not is irrelevant once you've reached this level, because by then, your world no longer revolves around her. You've seen firsthand that you are capable of building peace, success, and fulfillment on your own. You've learned that the greatest strength lies not in holding on, but in letting go. And you've experienced how much more powerful your life becomes when you stop pouring energy into proving your worth to someone who never saw it. This is why so many men, after truly letting go, look back and wonder why they ever gave so much of themselves away in the first place. They see clearly what they couldn't see before, that the real love story was never between them and her, it was between them and their own becoming. And here's what's most ironic: once you reach this stage, you no longer fear loss, and because of that, you rarely lose. Women are drawn to men who could leave at any time but choose to stay. That kind of choice carries a different weight than desperation. When you no longer need her, your presence with her becomes a gift rather than a plea. She feels it in your energy. You're there because you want to be, not because you can't be anywhere else. And that subtle difference changes everything. It makes you magnetic. It makes you commanding. It makes her see you as rare. Because in a world full of men who chase without dignity, you are the man who has options, direction, and peace. So remember this: the moment she knows you don't need her anymore isn't a game, it isn't revenge, it isn't a trick to pull her back. It is the natural result of you becoming whole. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop living for her approval, and instead build a life that is rich, grounded, and centered around your mission, she cannot ignore it. She may leave, she may stay, she may chase, she may disappear, but none of that matters anymore. Because once you've stepped into this level of strength, you've already won. She will feel it every time your name crosses her mind. She will remember it every time she compares you to the men who beg for her attention. And she will never forget the moment she realized that she lost a man who didn't need her to be complete. That right there is the power you've been searching for.